super stoked about the kind of everyone who's here from very different backgrounds. I mean, we have Naomi. She's launching streetwear brands. Jessica, she's part of building one of the newest, most innovative market centers in Dubai. And we have Sugar Taylor. She's in branding and she's transitioning to textiles, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a very exciting group, and great to hear everyone's ideas. And so yeah, let's get started. Excited to be here. So my name is Vinit Patil. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ribbon. It's a hybrid trade show platform, uh, omni-channel, on-site, online e-commerce. My previous experience, I had or I still have a marketplace called SKU. It's for emerging designers, where designers who are under a year or two max can get guaranteed response from retailers. And my experience with fashion, since this is about fashion brands, I was involved in the launch of Nike Sportswear line of Destroyer jackets, their varsity line of jackets. So that's me, and I'll over to Jimmy.
Hi guys, good afternoon, good morning. So my name is Jimmy MacDonald. I'm the Global Affairs Liaison Director for Ribbon, which means I talk to a range of trade shows internationally that cross all sectors about their digitalization plans. And prior to that, I was the founder of the London Design Fair, which is the largest trade fair for interiors during the London Design Festival.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Naomi, founder of Street Fashion Week. We rebranded as SFW Runway, but we're a platform for emerging designers. We've been in operation since 2016 and have worked and developed a business of over 250 brands. My background, I started working in fashion pretty early. I was working with IMG and also Fashion Week Online, and saw, there was an opportunity to basically help emerging designers surmount their borders to entry into the fashion industry. So that's what I've been doing since 2016.
Hi, so I'm Jessica Bazir. I'm currently the head of fashion and apparel for Dubai Global Connect, which is a new B2B market center which is opening up in Dubai. Prior to joining the team here a few years ago, I was working in the trade show and events world, did some time with Informa. And before that, I was working a lot with emerging brands on London Fashion Week Men's, and various sort of business development initiatives with the British Fashion Council.
Very cool.
And then there's me. I love all of your bios. My name is Sugar Taylor. I am a DC area-based designer, but from the Bronx, New York. Don't forget it. I have worked in the events and production industry for about 12 years, and I transitioned into being a full-time designer, designing for myself, and launching my textile line under a retail brand. So I'm getting into the e-commerce and doing the trade shows from a different perspective. I was selling services, but now I'm selling my products, and it's eye-opening and very interesting to be on this learning path. So I'm pleased to be here. Nice to meet you.
Awesome. Yeah. So my first question, and this is for Sugar, since you're the brand, you're thinking about trade shows. How do you choose which trade shows to participate in, or what criteria do you use to evaluate?
Well, I mean, me personally, I looked up a variety of trade shows that were happening in the industry, and just looked down the list of who had previously, exhibited with them. And I reached out to a lot of them if they matched like my aesthetic and my price range. And I said, what was your experience like? Do you feel like it was worth it? Do you have any tips for someone, who wants to exhibit at this show? And I found that most people were very willing to chat or email back and forth about their experience. And that's kind of how I was able to, narrow down to the show I wanted to attend. It was about the aesthetics. It was about the client experience, because if they're not having a good experience at the show, they're not going to be, prime to engage with.
So on the flip side, Naomi, if I were to ask, so your show is it's very different. It's got a very different format, at least from what I've seen. It's got you have the runway and you have the models, and it's a very unique approach. So on the flip side, how do you choose the brands?
So when I first started, again, I was so passionate about creating room for people that are passionate about fashion. So for me, it was simply skill that was the requirement. But the more I learned about business and the reality of what it takes to be a successful brand, we have set up a number of criteria. There's a performance requirement in terms of how much your business needs to be earning a month. Staff, the amount of staff they need to have, because it doesn't make sense for us to market you and bring you all this visibility, but you don't have the infrastructure in the business to handle it. So the way that I handled that without neglecting my initial target audience was to create a number of education resources, right? So we have courses, crash courses on how to set up your brand properly, how to create a marketing plan to ensure that if you do have good product and learn to build a community, you absolutely can reach our target goal of what our performance requirement is, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Wow. Okay, I love that. I mean, that's going above and beyond what most trade shows do. Really thinking about their business versus trying to fill the what the quotas. So that's really cool. Um, Jessica, now you're involved in the Dubai Global Connect, very new market, still bringing on new fashion brands. So what's your approach? How do you at this stage?
So really for us, when we're looking at brands and the brands that we're going to be working with, and also the trade show concepts themselves that we're going to bring to the market, we're going to have a new market center. That means a bunch of new trade show platforms. Really, it's about understanding the buying community, because that's who is going to be your audience, and that's where your return on investment is going to be for those brands. So we've really been trying to engage with buyers to understand what they're looking for from the brands that we bring to them in the shows. So for us, some of the feedback has been, and actually, you're right, it is around actually people being ready to sell. They can have the greatest concept in the world, beautiful product and a great story. But if they can't get that to market, to the buyer, then it just falls flat. And then your buyers are let down. And then they also start to lose faith in the other exhibitors of that show. So it is around quality of production, people that actually do understand, how they're going to get those products to market. We have another interesting challenge that we're so international. Brands that we're selecting need to be prepared that they might suddenly be asked to send product to a new market. The Middle East, we have a number of exciting markets, and a lot of people are coming to me because they're very keen to access this market, as well as a lot of the surrounding emerging markets as well. So that's what we're looking for as well, is that sales readiness, as well as a really strong brand identity and story.
Okay. And to assess the sales readiness, what are a few things that what are like the couple of things you focus on?
Yeah, it's funny. If I ask somebody for line sheets and they go, "What?" That sort of just raises a bit of a question, and it's happened.
Red
I'll
flag.
be honest, it's happened. But the reason we're talking to them is because obviously they've created probably some beautiful imagery. They might be doing some direct to consumer, selling through social media, but actually that kind of being ready to go take that next leap as a brand into kind of really growing into that wholesale market.
So you've assessed the brand, you've brought them into the show. Sugar, from your point, you've assessed the trade show, and you're at the trade show. Now, the next question is, and this is more of a general question. What are some, I would say, what's the best, what are some common mistakes that startup fashion brands make while launching at trade shows. So let's start with the trade show organizers. So Naomi, what are your thoughts?
The one thing I would say is lack of preparation. Sugar touched on the fact that she does her research and finds out who displayed the previous year. So it's important to find out those contacts. If the trade show has a hashtag, usually, especially with trade shows, there isn't a lot of social media presence, or a lot of manufacturers don't have strong social media presence. So it's easy to kind of dominate the space if you're using the active hashtags. I think for physical trade shows, it's important to have something interactive. I know that preparing for trade shows can be kind of expensive, from the registration fee to logistics of kind of moving your things around and traveling, et cetera. So oftentimes people will put the least bit of effort on the display, right? But it is important, if you can't afford like this huge installation, to have something interactive, whether it's a giveaway, if you talk to a local business that can give you a giveaway, or just something to make people want to stop at your booth, and then make sure that you have a tactic once they arrive there, an entertainment aspect, but a serious sales approach once you actually get them to stop at your booth. I know that was a lot, but yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Jessica, you've been with Informa, and you've probably seen a lot of these brands. Who, what are some of those mistakes you've seen, and how do you, maybe plan to correct them with the new market center?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is preparation is one of the key things. Like, once you actually get to the trade show, there is only so much you can really do. And it's that not being proactive, and it is a frustration as well, is that maybe have you actually optimized every possible opportunity that is available to you? There is some limited social media and things like that, but there's generally, there's catalogs, there's brochures, there's a lot of material that is generated. And as an organizer, I've spent many a time chasing brands for assets. I'm like, I am more than happy to promote you, but if you don't give me assets, I cannot just create them for you. And I think that's the thing. If you've never been an exhibitor before and you've just attended trade shows, you don't really realize all the pre-work that necessarily goes into being there and making it a success for you. So not only have you got to think about the booth, and it is a lot, but not only have you got to think about that booth, but actually, what assets do you need to get across? There is now a digital component which also plays a part. There is now an extra level of preparedness that needs to be done on, whatever kind of marketplace or networking that is, digitally available to you. And that's another place that you maybe aren't maximizing. And that's something that I think people do take for granted. And again, probably one of the reasons why it's taken us a little while for organizers to invest in those things, because they need the adoption by all of these brands to kind of justify it. So I think that's the key thing, is if you're going to do a trade show, go all in, really make sure you're fully prepared, that you are also pushing the organizer to be doing all those things for you, and don't give them an excuse. Give them all your assets with plenty of time. Like, I say this because it's actually organizers want to have assets at their disposal. They want to be able to make the show exciting. They want people to be able to discover something new. That's what the buyers are looking for as well. So I think make sure that you're really doing that, because otherwise, I've seen people just rock up on the day with the samples, put them on a rail, and think that they're going to suddenly be super successful. And you're like,
Yeah. Giving those assets early does give a leg up. You as the organizer get time to promote it. Definitely.
Yeah.
Sugar. So, have you made any mistakes or?
Well, no, I'm perfect. So
yeah, clearly we can see that.
No, but so I do have, because I have my event planning background and the fact that I have done trade shows as a buyer and as an exhibitor, I completely agree with, like, if you cannot, and I actually have a friend who's ready to go to market, and I'm like, okay, if you can't spend another $5,000 making your booth amazing, don't do it yet. And she was like, what? And I'm like, so for instance, I to touch on Naomi's point, at my booth, this recent trade show, I had these cards printed with my logo that were velvet. And every single person who touched the card said, oh, wow, I've never gotten anything like this. It was a nice touch point, but they didn't forget to follow. I didn't, miss a moment to connect with someone over something tactile. So it didn't cost me a whole bunch of money, but it was a big wow factor. So missing out on that is a common mistake, I believe. And also not reading. There were a lot of vendors that were asking questions that were sent out in all of the vendor packets. And I was like, how do you not know this? They sent it out 4 times. So
that's
read
organizer
your
hell.
emails. Read your emails. They are telling you what time you can set up, where everything is, what the Wi-Fi is. Like everything was in, all of this information was already readily available, but I had to answer 40 questions.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I chime in a sec on this one? So what I think from the perspective of an organizer as well, is that I think, sort of 10 years ago or 5 years ago, the exhibitors couldn't necessarily understand what the value was in providing all of those materials, because often they would just be joining a vast exhibitor list that didn't necessarily go anywhere. And I think now that digital platforms provide a sort of a multifunctional sort of role, I think exhibitors see a greater value, a return on investment from their time in populating their profiles. So when I was doing the London Design Fair, we didn't have anything except a pretty much analog exhibitor list. And I concur with you guys. It was very difficult to get them to submit all their materials. But I think that's one thing that has moved on in a massive way, is what they expect to get from submitting their materials and what they do actually get out of submitting their materials. So I think that's one of the differences if we're going about doing things differently.
And speaking of differently, the changing market conditions, right? When I say change, I just mean the habits. The habits have changed. Now the exhibitors, they have to send digital assets, and then that's one change in the habit. But they also expect a higher return on investment. The buyers are also approaching things differently. At the last roundtable we had, there was a discussion around how buyers would come to a trade show in the past with this thing like an open to buy, just a budget that they would exhaust at the shows. But things have changed now. Now they start to review things prior to coming to the show, and then they go and buy after the show. So there are a lot of things that have changed. So for a brand, when you're launching a brand, what are some things that brands need to do to adapt to these changing behaviors of the buyers who are not only attending but also engaging remotely?
I think it's an interesting one, because with the buyers now actually wanting to be able to buy more consistently, I think is one of the things, and actually there is a kind of more of an on-demand expectation now, and there's a lot of reasons as to why that is. So I think really that's where brands also need to be prepared, and as organizers we also need to, and we talk about it a lot with the digital, is how you extend that trade show beyond however many days. It is now about being able to broaden that out and also think about it more transactionally, to be honest, because that's ultimately what everybody wants, but they want to be able to have a seamless and easy transaction. And we might have that interaction at the show, but actually being able to then follow up seamlessly and easily throughout the year and continue that, and not be jumping to 1,000,001 different kind of platforms and places and things like that. That's also a frustration that I hear from both exhibitors and from buyers. They're being asked to join this, that, and the other, and to sign up and things like that. So I think that's something that again has changed. People are adapting to. I don't necessarily know we've got it seamlessly sorted out yet, but that kind of ability that buyers are going to maybe buy shallower at the show, and then they might actually then follow up and do a second buy, and they might want to say, let me see how these perform, and actually be able to go on the platform. So I think that is really where the buying has changed, that it is long gone is spring, summer, autumn, winter. We are now seeing that buy continually happening throughout the year, and I think brands need to also be prepared for that and kind of think through their logistics and how they communicate that.
Yeah. And Naomi, what are your thoughts?
I think similar to what Jessica said, the only thing I would add is just reiterate is follow up. I think brands need to not set realistic expectations because people are buying at trade shows, but kind of mitigate their expectations. And then I think all brands should have a CRM tool, so that you're really organizing the contacts and you remember who you spoke to, who expressed interest, and to even pre-plan your plan for follow-up. You can, whether that means drafting emails ahead of time, writing notes when you're having conversations with people, so you remember, a touch point that you connected with them on. Yeah, I think those are some ways. I think trade shows will never go out of business because they are the ultimate resource for bringing people to you that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. Now, they can't hold your hand through the process. It is your job to kind of carry it from the point, after you've made those connections. So, yeah.
And Sugar, just jumping on what Naomi said, how has your approach changed in any way? Just talking about like, pre-show and post-show, or are you trying something new?
Yes. Well, okay. So when I look at the market from a brand standpoint, I see that it's a good thing on the brand side that the market is kind of oversaturated. I can go on fair.com right now and see all of the suppliers that I buy from my retail brand, and everybody has access to that information. So I think that exclusivity is going to be the future again, because everybody always wants what other people don't have. So I am working on more so like curating a list. So my follow-up procedure is, hey, I sent out an email with a video in it. Hey, I remember you. It was so nice to meet you. Let's connect. Join my email list, because what I do is I'll let you know what I'm designing before anybody else knows. Before it goes on Fair, before it goes on Ribbon, you'll know what I'm working on before anyone, and you have the chance to order before it hits the market. Because I think offering that exclusivity kind of makes them feel like, ooh, I knew about this rug she was designing before anybody. So,
very good Britishness in that.
I do love British accents.
Wow. So that's interesting. So that a video, how do you? Okay, now you really piqued my interest. You
I'm techie as well.
Wow. And how many? So is it like a particular set of people your
So
best?
everyone I came in contact with at the show, I followed up with. I sent them this email with the video in it, and my subscriber list is pretty young, but I got about 500 or 600 new subscribers just from the show and having that conversation with them. Like, hey, be on my exclusive list, because I do let people know what I'm designing before it hits the market. And that like piqued their interest, because they're like, yeah, everybody does know what everybody's selling now, because you can find it so easily online on all these marketplaces.
Yeah.
But nothing will ever trump that in-person at a trade show experience of, connecting with someone in person.
Yeah. And trade shows, compared to the marketplaces, like the saturated marketplaces like Fair, as you mentioned, they're more curated, right? It's really,
Yes.
they're limited by the size of the show. That keeps it very focused, right?
Yes.
So that curation is it's important. You're right. The exclusivity is the way of the future. More niche marketplaces versus the for everyone type market. Great. So looking ahead, what are some trends and innovations you see shaping the future of trade shows, right, in the fashion industry?
Yeah, I think it is a tough one, but I think, it's kind of a strange one to say, but I think, yeah, experience is the main word. I think we all, over the last few years, realized what we were missing when, COVID. And I think that's where we are seeing that trend now, that everyone is really thinking about experience. And like you say, that personalization and that real connection is something that's super important to us. And I think that's what you're going to see from a selling point of view. Fashion's a great industry because it is such a tactile industry. You know, as much as we can survive digitally, you know, being able to interact with product, and that's what buyers love. Like you talk to a buyer, they're such product people. They could go on and on about products for hours. And that's the thing. And nothing really beats that. So I think what we'll see is people trying to come up with ways to enhance that experience of product. Because yes, we can go online, we can see it, and we're used to that, but coming up with something different. And I don't necessarily know what that means today. You know, whether that's going to have something to do with how you kind of bring in the AR and kind of lay over things in that digital element, whether it's people thinking, you know, actually about how they present, and you know, whether it is around the fashion shows, but how does that integrate into a showroom, and presentations and film and video and the content that we create and put out there. And I think as an organizer, what we're really kind of doing now with Dubai, you know, we're starting from scratch in this blank slate, which is super exciting. And actually, it's quite funny when you go to people and say, right, we're starting from scratch. You can literally tell us what you want to do. How do you want to do it? How do you see it? And actually, you know, people will come up with some of the most amazing and exciting ideas. And I think that's what we want to start to see moving forward, is we want to see something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least something that represents our new moment in time, right? So something forward looking rather than repeating the old. You know, we're very aware of how to create a trade fair with shell scheme stands. But it is about, I think it's going to be all about experience and an ease of kind of connecting and staying connected over a much longer period. And I think like stand size is reducing in value in terms of like brand projection. It's not about that anymore. You know, how big can you show, like at the Milan Furniture Fair, which was like, interestingly, half the size this year. And I think that's what people are looking at now, is what experiences, and also the sort of messages they want to deliver about their brand, right? We haven't really touched on that bit, but what they want to project about their brand, because people want to know more details about brands now in order to like appeal to sort of Gen Z's new values, you know? So I think that it's going to be interesting times to see how people interpret all these new challenges when exhibiting.
So for brands like you know, Sugar, once you're at the trade show, once you're exhibiting, how do you measure the success of the show?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious ROI where it's like, okay, I've spent 10,000, did I at least sell 10,000, you know? But beyond that, it's about the connections, because I mean, I met buyers from Anthropologie and Target, and we've continued to have conversations. So I would not have met those people if I hadn't invested in my brand in that way. So I see it more as a marketing investment, more so than an immediate, oh, I need to make this particular amount of capital back. So I think that, you know, it really just depends on what your goals are. And if your goals are more like PR aligned, where you want to connect and align yourself with other types of brands, even other brands that I met at the show were great connections for me. So that's how I measure my personal success, is the connections I make, because I know that I can, you know, work those into, you know, more brand alignments in the future, if not direct sales.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's and do other you know, in trade shows, you're right. I spent $10,000. Did I make $10,000 or $20,000 back? That is the most tangible return on investment.
Right.
Do you feel like other brands or other emerging brands also share that same type of mentality or approach to ROI?
I feel like it depends on where you are in business. You know, if you would have asked me this question 5 years ago, I'd have been like, if I'm not making that money back, I'm not doing the show. And now I'm like, I'll do the show 5 times if I'm going to make the connections I'm making, because I believe in my product and my designs. And I know if I get in front of the right people, I'm going to have my Oprah moment. So, I think it's worth the investment to me when I look at it as a long-term strategy, as opposed to, oh, I know I need to make this quarter, I need to make. No, I'm more so like the next shows that I'm doing, I'm looking at them as long-term investments and maximizing my investment. Like you said earlier, Jessica and Naomi, when you were talking about being responsive, sending in those assets, when they ask me for something from the shop object, so I send it within 24 hours because I don't want to miss that opportunity for them to promote my business.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So I think what we should be watching out for is, if we want to know the future of how brands launch, we just need to track sugar, really.
There we go.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
you're now our benchmark. We're gonna be stalking you and seeing what you're up to.
And Naomi, what are your how do your brands, the streetwear brands, how do they measure?
Yeah, that's something I'm working on improving in terms of actually tracking a system for tracking the exact impact to their business. But like Sugar mentioned, it depends on the stage that the brand is in. If they're new and they put all their savings into, registering for and preparing for the show, then their expectations are a little different. I kind of work with them to make sure I set clear expectations in the beginning. As I mentioned earlier, we bring the right people in the room, as many people that we feel would want to connect with your business, but it's up to you to make sure you're prepared as a business. You have the ability to follow up with them. And I'm very keen on making sure I make that clear in all my communication. I have one-on-ones with them before the show. I'm like a mom to them for the show, just so they are clear, and we've, of the 250 brands that I've worked with, we've had over half of them, go on to be huge, tremendous success. But for others, they're still in the beginning. And as long as they met some great connections, we can't always guarantee sales, but as long as they make great connections and they have marketing assets from the show, then to me, it's a success.
What role has technology played in the evolution of trade shows since the pandemic?
Honestly, I will say that this transition in my business kind of happened during the pandemic, like a little before. I left my event planning firm like right before the event industry went down because of the pandemic. And it was like, I feel like I got off on one of those little boats off the Titanic. But so I started off online, I started off looking for different online marketplaces, and I was anxious for the trade shows to open back up. But I think that it's only natural for people to want to find whatever they need and whatever they can from the comfort of their home. However, like if I'm a buyer, I want to see, touch, feel certain fabrics, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. Like that's something I can't order 50 of these shirts without feeling the quality of the linen or the fabric. So I think that that's never going to go away, but
Mhm.
making it easier to buy online. Like I see people doing like VR in the future. I think that it's too soon for that right now, but in the future, when that's more like readily available, to do like an AR experience or VR experience where you can like walk through a trade show without being there and like zoom in on products and connect with people virtually. I think that's going to be, a thing futuristically.
Mhm. Yeah, and the from the from online, so what's been the behavior that you've seen? So they come to the trade show, and then what's been their sort of buying trajectory? Because yes, they do need to see stuff and touch it. How does it? How do you find the progression of coming to the trade show, or just what's your overall experience been like?
When we launched the online portion of it, I didn't get a whole bunch of traffic because I was a new brand. And I felt like that was something that, the more established brands got like the pre-show traffic to bring people to their booth. So I had to like literally stop people like, hey, I like your shoes. Come over here, girl. uh, and put forth that effort. So I didn't really have the experience where people knew me online and then were able to come find me at the show. Like I had to be very, forthcoming with the conversation to get people to actually stop at the booth. And I kept my design very clean and simple because my products are colorful. So I wanted super clean white backdrop, and then like my products on top and pops of like iridescent color. So I did things that made people like, oh, I like your logo that you put that on an iridescent foil. And then now we're having a whole conversation about my product line. So like luring people in that way was how I was able to transition it.
Okay, nice. And Jessica, you guys are at the ground floor of innovation right now. It's in the process of getting built. So, what role do you see technology play? There's like import, export, new markets.
There's so much that technology can do for us. I mean, it is endless. And I think our biggest thing that we've been looking at is actually what do you do first? And I think that is one of the other key things, that you can't do everything and you can't be everything to all people. So when you are starting with a blank slate, as it were, that we are, with so much opportunity and so many directions to go in, it's thinking about that. And I think the key thing with technology that I think, is across all businesses, not just the fashion industry, is that we now have so many more data points that we can use to help us make better and more informed decisions. Even from a trade show point of view, actually seeing, who is connecting with who, obviously as an organizer, you have certain visibility on what's going on if you've got a platform kind of behind it, and understanding, what is it that people are going to, what is it that they're being drawn to? Is it those brands that have paid to be featured at the top of this? Are people actually interested in their brands, or are they scrolling through and actually connecting because somebody actually has a really exciting product? And starting to figure out what is it that people are engaging with, and then that can then inform, what do you do the next edition? Where do we need to invest more? Where can we do more to help with that? So I think because everything is so measurable and there are so many data points, like we say, brands also now have more data points, so they also can come back to organizers,
Yes.
and actually have, and they will pull you up on it. So you also need to be on top of your data. So you've now got this two-way where people have much more visibility than they've ever had before, which is great. And I think that's something that will really drive, and that's what we're seeing. And yeah, you mentioned, Sugar, kind of the whole kind of metaverse and this kind of virtual reality space. Again, technology is moving very quickly. Again, not 100% there, but even for us as a new business, thinking about how do we, and I'll say this, Dubai is very forward thinking when it comes to the metaverse, and we have government authorities with spaces already in the metaverse and things like that. So it's something that we're very aware of, but again, it needs to complement the physical. And I think that's where the two are not quite there yet. We are an industry that needs that touch point. So how do they work together? And actually, the graphics is moving quickly, but again, I think when you're talking about sneakers and things like that, augmented reality is pretty good there, but with actual apparel, it's still got a little bit of a way to go and things. But 10 years is a long time in the world of tech. If you think about what technology we were using 10 years ago, it's absolutely crazy. So I mean, I think we'll all be much more used to these tools, not in 10 years, but in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think the ladies, Jessica and Sugar, already kind of touched on the most obvious, things. Some things I would add would be community. I think it helps, strengthen your ability to build community around a certain idea, or you can even market research or co-create collections with your audience. And if there's a brand or a retailer whose attention you're trying to get, it's possible to get your community to engage with that brand, to make that connection and say, hey guys, if we were designing for this brand or this retailer, what do you think? Just so you can get their attention before you even get to the trade show. And then as far as the community aspect, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the RFID chips that are popping up with certain brands, but there's the where to earn, things that are starting to be more popular, and they're pretty inexpensive to implement to brands. And it's easy to track if the original touch point was at the trade show. the lifespan of that product.
Hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they put a RFID chip in the product, and then
The
they
product.
able to track its progress. Wow. Okay.
Track people's location.
That's pretty. That's
The original point of it's like what are they called, the art, what's the art called
the
in Web3?
Oh, NFTs.
Oh,
NFTs. I can't believe I'm
Yes.
blanking out. It's the same concept in NFT, right? So an artist designs a piece of art, sells it for maybe $20, and then the person who buys it improves the value of that product, and then resells it. But for every resale, that initial artist gets paid for it. In a similar fashion, I can buy a piece of garment from a brand, and then for every person that I basically refer, if someone sees me wearing it, they can scan it. For the lifetime of me owning that product, I make money, if that makes sense.
yeah.
That's
Okay.
crazy. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that only happened in the art world, but yes, in the clothing world, that's some
Wow.
that's some
That's new.
yeah.
It's really new to me anyway.
We can talk more
I'm
about
gonna
that.
research that for sure.
I work with a couple companies that make it easy for brands to implement, and I can provide the information if you guys want to add it as a resource in the
Mhm.
description of this video.
Yeah, totally.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, and speaking of community, there's in the most tangible ways, a brand called Beta Brand out here in San Francisco. They actually involve the community in designing the clothes. So
Mm.
somebody can send a sketch, they take a look at it, they create a prototype, and they send it out for voting. If it gets a lot of votes, then they actually go produce it. One last question for the group is about the new crop of fashion designers or people who want to exhibit. What's some advice you have for fashion entrepreneurs who want to launch at trade shows? So people who've never done shows before.
I would tell them to do what I did and definitely research. Do not work in a silo. I think a lot of as small businesses, we tend to work in a silo, and we don't connect with other brands as much as we can, so we can learn from them. But definitely reach out and learn from your other peers what worked for them, so that you can miss out on all those painful learning curves. It is a major expense. So, trying to wing it, this is not the place to try to wing it. Do the research and connect with people.
I think, yeah, kind of building on what Sugar's saying about research is not only kind of talking to other brands about being at trade shows, but really researching into the different trade shows. There are a lot out there, and some will be more suitable to your brand. Some are very focused on particular categories. Some are very focused on certain geographies, and some are super international. So really, I think thinking about that and what your business is ready for, and that sort of, if you're not going to be able to, go and suddenly, take thousands of orders, actually, really think about that. Are you better off starting with a smaller, more focused show that focuses on a particular kind of region and growing kind of slowly from there? They also tend to be more affordable, in all honesty, when you're kind of starting out. So I think balancing that up, because as well, that will then give you a nice community, peers to speak to, and potentially other people that can recommend other trade shows that you might want to go to in future. You kind of see that brands do progress through trade shows. So I think, yeah, it is about making sure you are ready and that you have done that research, and you pick the right platform for you, and just be authentic with yourself as well. What is it that you want to show? We talk about the booth, and actually, you can spend an awful lot on a booth, but actually, does that make sense for you? Do you make sure that the beautiful kind of white backdrop and your products are popping? Actually, there are ways of thinking that you can do an awful lot with not a lot, as well. So I think thinking that through, you don't need to throw everything at it. I think that's something to be mindful of as well.
So mine is multi-layered. The first is to really own your brand, to know who you are as a brand, to optimize your products, and to make sure that you don't have to go out of your way to stand out in the marketplace, but that they're a true reflection of the fingerprint that you want to have on the market, right? And you can talk about your product as easily as possible. The second one is to make sure that you're proactive in planning what your deliverables or what your takeaways that you want from the trade show are, so that you set realistic expectations, and that even though you may not meet all your goals, you have the minimum that you want to reach. And as long as you do that, whether it's a number of people that you want to meet at the trade show or whatever those are for you or your specific brand, and to make sure that you understand what it means, right? Some people want to do it as a goal, as a milestone, but really I've had brands that went ahead and they participated in trade shows and they got an order, let's say a couple hundred, but they don't know where to go from there. Are you able to fulfill those orders in the timeline that the buyer is requiring from you? And a lot of times you get the money afterwards to make sure you have your finances in order to be able to cover the expenses associated. So those are some things that come to mind.
This is good stuff for the community to learn about and to learn from your experience. So thank you so much for coming, and let's all connect however you want, LinkedIn or whatever you're.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. This was really great. And if there's anything we can do to continue to support, Ribbon and any of you guys that were here today as well, let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I definitely plan on connecting, and I'm honored to have been included. Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys. We're a new platform out here, so it's always great to meet with new people and kind of grow our international community and have people around the world that know about what we're doing here in Dubai. So thank you so much.
Did the email say 1 million square feet or 100,000 square feet?
So it's a million square meters. So in square feet, it's like 10 million square feet. So yeah, it's I'm sitting. Our building at the moment is only like 4,000 square meters, so like 40,000 square foot. This is just the baby kind of building, our first one. And we're excited. We've got some events we're doing this year. I'm super excited because we're actually getting going with some fun stuff and doing some stuff with the Fashion Week here as well. So yeah, we'll start saying, here's some more stuff from us.
Nice. Yeah. Well, one interesting thing about Dubai, the center is it's connected to an airport. So, talk about end-to-end fulfillment.
Yeah, we've got all the logistics. We've got it all here.
FedEx.
I needed an excuse to visit Dubai. I think I found.
Exactly. There you go. Let us know anytime. You're welcome.
Excellent.
All right, guys.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we'll speak soon. Cheers.
Pleasure meeting you all.
Nice to meet you all.
Likewise.